Hey guys, welcome to the 10 Scale Adventures Workbench, and today I'm going to play with a VFD. Hey YouTube, thanks for tuning in to 10 Scale Adventures and checking out the workbench video that we have. It's the first video that I'm going to do in a whole series of videos from the workbench. It's going to be a new thing that I'm going to add to go with the running videos that I normally do out on the trail and at the different comp events. But I wanted to start showing off things that I'm doing with my trucks, as well as give some tips and some tricks and some things that I've learned over the time that I've been into the RC crawlers. So the first thing that I have in the first video that really got me wanting to do this was this new build that I've started. Now, caveat here, this build is for my wife. It's a class 1 truck for her, thus why there's so much pink built into this. That said, it's a transit or a conversion I'm planning on doing on all of my TF2 chassis. So what I have here is I have the Vanquish VFD transmission. You can see that right there. It's labeled VFD right on the transmission. This is the VFD transmission from a VS410 Pro, and they sell this transmission as a standalone kit. Now the kit is designed for going into a VS410 chassis kit, and I believe you can put it into an SCX10 chassis as well. I'm not 100% on that. I haven't tried. Maybe that's something I'll play around with in the future. But I like the TF2 chassis a lot, and I wanted to run something different than everybody else. So I believe what I have here sitting in front of me is the very first Trailfinder 2 chassis with a Vanquish VS410 or a Vanquish VFD transmission stuffed in it. In order to accomplish this, I had to do up a skid design. Obviously, there's no skid that automatically mounts the VFD into a TF2. So I designed up a skid that would allow that to mount in there. And then, of course, in the spirit of scale, I did a full scale engine design that works with the VFD. So the skid, which I'll show you over here, is a completely flat bottom skid. It does hang down below the chassis a little bit, but that's really no different than the regular TF2 setup as far as clearances, but no more shovel. All of our shovel and everything's all gone. This is a nice smooth transition under here and should greatly reduce the number of hang-ups that this has. The scale motor mounts to the front of the VFD transmission the same way that the spur and pinion cover for this transmission mounts. Now you'll notice that with the VFD, if you haven't seen this transmission before, I'll show you on this side, the motor is not in front of the transmission up here where all the RC4 drive scale setups are that have the motor, the electric motor hidden inside the scale motor. The VFD puts the motor down here underneath the transmission and allowing this to be completely designer look and appearance. The reason that I really wanted to go this route is I've had issues with the R4 transmission causing overheat issues in the electric motors that are cased in faux engines. The other limitation of the current existing faux engines is the variety of motors that you can put in them can be limiting depending on features of the electric motor case, where screws are, length of the case, whether or not they use sensor wires. The motor that's in here right now is a Holmes Hobbies 2200 Polar Pro, the stubby variant. So the sensor wire is not currently in, but as you can see back in here, I have plenty of room to add the sensor wire without having any issues. And I'm also not going to have heat issues in the motor as a result of trapping that heat in a scale motor. So one of the other additional features that I added into this truck here was the ability to hide the electronics, or at least the receiver in this case. Up to this point, obviously I still have a lot of building to go left on this rig. The back half, none of this stuff is in. The electronics tray is not there. The battery location's not there yet. But that's all still to come. This is an early stage of this build. One of the things that, as I was saying, that I incorporated, which let me pop the cover on this, is the faux motor serves as a receiver box. So we'll pop this little screw out right here at the front. One screw and the top of the motor comes off. So there's the top of our scale motor. We got pink power on there. That's my my wife's go-to for her crawler names. And when we look up inside that motor case, there's actually a lot of space in there for your receiver and extra length of your servo wires. That way you can help hide some of that electronic stuff, helping with improving the scale appearance. In support of a nice clean build and cable management and making everything look nice, I also added a set of cable management mounts here. These may change a little bit as I get further along in the build and incorporating additional wiring or other components that are going to go around here. But I wanted to start working those kind of details into the truck from the very beginning, so that as I go through, I'm not trying to having to go back and change stuff in order to hide my wiring or make the truck look nice and clean. So the real question that comes up now is drive shaft clearances. As many of you probably know, or if you don't know, you can go check it out. The VS410 Pro uses a driver side diff. The VFD uses a driver side drop. And I've heard it said by a few people that for the VFD transmission, for all the clearances and everything to work properly, you have to have that combination, a driver side drop axle with the driver side drop transfer case. That is not necessarily true. So with this, from the factory, Trail Finder 2s, which actually, Trail Finder 2s from the factory come with a driver side drop if they're equipped with the R3 transmission and transfer case setup. The stock RTR Mojave, for instance, the differential on those axles, it comes with Yoda axles, is a passenger side differential. The transfer case on those is a driver side drop transfer case. So putting a VFD in here doesn't really change that at all, and all the clearances are actually still going to work. So if you look in here, let's see if I can get you a good angle at it. The drive shaft I have in this right now is an SSD Scale Universal Drive Shaft. Put that into the camera view. Oh, it's really tough to see. Okay, there, you can see right about there. That's where my drive shaft crosses my forward support for my VFD. There is clearance there. It's hard to see and get a proper angle on it, but the drive shaft doesn't rub on that forward brace at all on this, and that's with the axle fully compressed all the way to the top where your maximum compression would be. And my axle still travels the full stroke of the application. The odds of it ever being fully compressed this way is pretty slim unless you run 100% droop, which I don't know a lot of people who run 100% droop on tiny tire trucks because the ground clearance would be terrible. But if you ran, say, 50% droop like I run in my other TF2, the clearances are fantastic. And as far as articulation, the drive shaft doesn't get up into the skid area or links at all, with no issues there. So that should be great. I don't anticipate any issues. And the truck rolls back and forth just fine without any issues, no binding in the drive shafts at all. The out back, again, is pretty straightforward out back. There's no surprises, nothing going on back there. The drive shaft that's in there, I believe it's a June Fac style It's probably a knockoff version. It's just something I had laying around that I threw in to look at geometry. And right now that angle, that drive shaft angle, looks a little steep, but there's not very much weight on this truck. So once this truck actually gets settled out with the rest of the components that belong on it and the body that's going on it, it should sit probably at about a 50% droop, very similar to how I run my other TF2. And the drive shaft angles are they're great. They match my TF2 drive shaft angles almost identically. And I run the same SSD scale universals on most of my trucks and don't have any issues with drive shaft angles similar to what this is showing. The only significant modification I had to do for this one, so this truck has the RC4 wheel drive Link Kit conversion for the TF2 already on it. I did have to make one adjustment to that Link Kit in order to get everything to work. The back end is a direct bolt up, no changes had to be made there. The front, the lower links mount exactly the same as they do out of the kit or with the stock drivetrain components and skid in. The upper link on the front, this link up in here, the top third link, it had to move. It was originally mounted back in this region here, very close to almost directly above where the lower link's mounted. That had a clearance issue with the drive shaft where it meets the transfer case. Okay, sorry about that. We had a little bit of technical difficulties there. So the modifications to the link kit, the only change was the upper link in the top front, right up in here. It would have interfered with the output shaft of the VFD because it's a little bit closer to the driver's side frame rail than the stock transfer case is. So I took that link and I moved it forward to right here where you can see there that nut is, which is a pre-existing hole in the TF2 chassis. That link is the only geometric change to the suspension in the entire truck over the stock suspension setup with this, and it has no impact on the stroke travel of the suspension whatsoever. Everything still works properly. It articulates well. The axle stays centered as it travels up and down through the stroke. Let me see if I can show you that. So yeah, very minimal side-to-side play. Obviously, any setup that runs a 3-link with a panhard is going to have some sway in it from one side to the other, and that's the nature of the panhard setup and the radius in which it travels. The more level the panhard bar is, the less side-to-side sway that you get. And currently with the suspension setup that's on this and being a limited travel class 1 build, you can see right up in underneath there that my panhard bar is at full droop, is still at a very mild angle, and at about 50%, somewhere in that region, it's almost parallel with the axle. And having that almost parallel with the axle means that my side-to-side play as it goes up and down is minimalized. So this here is my VFD conversion setup for the TF2. I'm hoping to have this together, either this particular truck together to the point that I can actually start doing some run videos and some testing with it to see how its performance is versus a stock setup in a TF2. The weight distribution, now some are going to say that it doesn't have as much forward bias or as a TF2 setup, and technically that is a little bit true. With an R3 transmission up in this region and your motor all the way up at the front out this way, yeah, the R3 convert setup or even the R4 scale trans setup probably has a little bit better forward biased weight. However, this has a lower CG with still a forward bias by having that motor all the way down here in the bottom of the chassis. As I was saying before, it's down in the bottom of the chassis in line with the frame rails, and it's still forward of the center line of the chassis. So you're still getting a forward biased weight on your transmission. The other big benefit is how low that motor is in line with the frame rails. You're actually going to end up with a lower CG overall in comparison to the R3 or R4 with the forward motor that's up between the shock towers. So that should be a huge benefit for this truck. The other final major perk with, well, actually there's two major perks with running a VFD over the RC4 wheel drive standard transmissions for these, is that the VFD kit, the kit transmission, which can be purchased separate from a VS410, it's just a transmission kit. Out of that kit, right out of the packaging, brand new, it comes with a 6.5% overdrive built into the transfer case. So 6.5% overdrive is a really low amount of overdrive, but it is enough to give you a little bit more wheel speed up at the front of your truck than you have at the back. That's really going to help with improving the steering radius, and it's going to help keep the truck more settled on inclines and declines, because you'll get a little bit of pull out of the front end to help keep the back end from loading up as you're going up hills to keep the nose planted, or when you're going downhill, it'll help pull the front end down the hill a little bit faster, almost putting a little bit of drag on the rear tires, which should help keep things a little bit more settled on hills on the decline as well. The other huge benefit, and now if you're running Sorca Class 1, it doesn't matter because it's not legal, but if you're running G-Con type or G6 type events or just major trail events, where you go out and you just run and run and run, or depending on what your local club rules are, if you can run a dig in your Class 1 trucks, the Vanquish Hertz dig unit for the VFD will work in this setup as well. It doesn't move the tail shaft at all, so you still get the same drive shaft length. It mounts in on the same place right here in the back. The only major difference is this rear case changes right there. The rear case on the transfer case changes, and there's a little bit bulkier unit right here where the tail shaft of the transfer case is, but that's it. And then you have to figure out where to mount your servo. The VS410 mounts the servo back here above the drive shaft with a link going forward to articulate it. That said, I'm not sure exactly where I'll do it in this chassis. Probably something very similar. I don't have a dig yet, but I will be getting one. So that is my TF2 VFD conversion setup in a trail finder. I hopefully will have running videos and testing videos of this in the very near future. Additionally, I'm going to be putting this setup into a leaf sprung truck. I have one of those, and I don't see any reason why it won't work in a leaf sprung truck. It doesn't interfere with any of the mount places for the leaf springs, because the leaf springs mounts are back in this region on the chassis, and they're up in this region on the front of the chassis. So the skid setup doesn't interfere with any of it. It doesn't have any links to interfere geometry-wise in the front end. Just the drive shaft. I already know the drive shaft angle is good. The axle doesn't move, so I don't see any reason why this won't work in a leaf sprung truck, and I'm definitely going to be doing that here in the very near future as well. If you're interested in doing this conversion on any of your trucks, 10 Scale Adventures now has a Shapeways store, and all the parts to do this are on the Shapeways store. The name of the Shapeways store is, you guessed it, 10 Scale Adventures. So jump on there, check that out, save that page. All the different work I'm doing for this truck, as well as some other stuff I've done, which will show up in some other videos, is all on that Shapeways store. So feel free to go on there, and if you do get this stuff, I want to see your setups. I want to see the stuff installed. Send me pictures, hit me up on Facebook. And that camera just died again. So let me tweak this one. There we go. For some reason, one of my cameras is dying. Quick change, the video's just about over. But yes, if you have if you do one of these builds, send me pictures, hit me up on Facebook, 10 Scale Adventures on Facebook. Be sure to like and subscribe this video. Check out the other videos on the channel. And until next time, we will see you out on the trail, or not, depending on where you're at. If you're in my area, probably will see you on the trail. Yeah,